All About Relationships is an engaging, lighthearted, and practical show designed to help people improve their relationships in meaningful ways. Hosted by Dr. Don Allen, a certified Gottman therapist, as well as an advanced trainer for the Institute. He is also certified in emotion-focused therapy. With over 40 years of experience in the field of psychotherapy, Dr. Allen is here to provide expert guidance on strengthening marriages, parent-child relationships, friendships, and more. Through insightful discussions, audience call-ins, and guest experts, viewers receive real-world strategies to enhance intimacy, communication, and overall relationship satisfaction. So now, please welcome the host of All About Relationships, Dr. Don Allen.
Hello and welcome back. So we are coming into a new show here, and I've decided to shift gears a little bit. The last couple shows I had, just reflecting, it kind of seemed heavy. We talked about infidelity and, what happens when we don't communicate well. Now, the good news with that is that I showed lots of good opportunities for us to know how to talk to our partner if we're having those bad habits. But I thought we could use a little more uplifting show today. And what I mean by uplifting here is how to communicate to your partner so that you're really building that relationship house in a way that's not only meaningful, but meaningful for years to come. So that's what we're going to do today. So the exciting title of my show today is Making Dreams Come True, listening deeply to build shared meaning with our partner. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to look at how we can do that. Okay. I was happy that I had a number of questions from the mailbag that I could use that really dovetails nicely into this topic. So this is a show that I call All About Relationships, working towards ideal marriage and loving, lasting relationships. So I always ask at the beginning, what have I done for my relationship today? Well, the good news is you are doing something right now, which is you are getting some really good, practical, tangible advice that you can use in your relationship to continue to build that loving relationship that you've always imagined. And you can build on those first years when everything was amazing and you're just married, maybe, and all of the things were going well and life wasn't happening to us. So that's part of the problem. Life happens to us and we have difficulty for those reasons. But one of the things I like to talk about is what goes into a successful relationship. Okay. One of the things we know, and I commonly cite the Gottman Institute because their methods are so tried and true for so long. But what goes into a successful relationship? Well, I'm going to talk about some of those pointers that we have. The other thing, as you noticed from the last couple episodes, what undermines our relationship? What tends to make us drift into old patterns or old habits or bad behaviors that can cause us not only to be in a rut, but actually to do things that don't work. Okay. The other thing in the last couple of weeks, we talked about what can destroy a relationship, right? What can destroy it? So we don't want to go anywhere near those, but we want to know the markers for it. We want to know the warning signs. We want to know the dangers. When you go up to a railroad crossing, they give you tons of things that say, hey, don't be on the tracks right now because we got a train coming through. So those are warning signs. Same way with relationships. One of the ways we do that, one of the main symptoms is we drift. We drift into bad habits. And I have plenty of shows in the past. I encourage you to go and look at them because we'll talk about those and what goes into problematic relationships. As you can see, I put up my identifying information. If you want to write to me, if you want to ask questions about problems that you might have or questions you want me to use in the mailbag, please feel free to do that. I really welcome those comments and I really like to be interactive. So you can help me by giving me some of that information. So that's one of the things I like is we're interactive. So let me look at some of the questions that I have here to get us interested in our show today. Okay. So here's my first question. Do you really know what your partner dreams about? Now slow down. Don't be defensive or don't want to come into, well, of course I do. Just slow down and think, do I? Do I really know what my partner dreams about? Not just at night, but in their life. One thing you can do is you don't have to look very far. You can look to yourself and you can look throughout your life and what's important. I always say, what do you want to say about your life when you're 80? I commonly go back to that. But, we have to make plans along the way. Or what happens is we get too far in our life and maybe we miss out and then we regret. But when you're in a relationship, you have to not only look for yours, but you have to look for your partners. Okay. So, for example, we've all heard of a bucket list, right? Things we want to do in our lifetime. What are the things your partner wants to have accomplished in the next 100 years? What kind of things do you know of that they want to do? Do you know all of them? Interesting thoughts, right? So, along those lines, when was the last time you asked your partner what they imagined marriage would be when they were young? People sometimes, when they're a kid, imagine what their life's going to be. I wonder what I'm going to do for a living. I wonder, how life is going to turn out for me. And a lot of people say, boy, I'm going to grow up and I want to start dating. Well, who do I want to date? How do I want to date? But the other thing too is how do we work together to make those dreams come true? Got to know what the dreams are first. So that's a really important question for today's show and something I'm going to have you play with when we leave our show today and you go talk to your partner. Okay. Last one I want to talk about that's an interesting one here. I thought about it when I put it down because I wanted to segue nicely into the next section. And that is, have you ever tried so hard to make your point of view and you were so concerned with making your dreams happen, right? That you forgot to be curious about your partner's dreams. The reason I mention that a little bit is because sometimes what we do is we start getting on what we need to tell our partner. We've talked about this before. So you're really waiting for your partner to take a breath so you can jump in and get back to letting them know what's so important to you. And if they're doing it back, now you're really, really reducing the probability of you guys communicating in an efficient and effective way. And a lot of times people could walk away from those kind of conversations wounded. It's like, well, my partner doesn't even care what's important to me. And you do, but because of this communication pattern, you can get away from it. So we want to pay real close attention, because we don't want to be so interested in our stuff that we smush our partner's stuff. And we can get into those habits. Now, the other thing you notice about my show is I don't want to be critical, I guess I'd want to say. I want you to be curious. I wonder what goes right and I wonder what goes wrong with regard to how I communicate with my partner. So we're gonna look at that. The other thing, like I said, I wanted to stay mainly with positivity today. So I want to harken back to the foundational stuff, the rudiments, the things that we always want to do well. So we're going to review some of those as we talk about our topic today, right? So, yes, one of the things I made a note to myself is last couple of weeks we talked about what block connection, and the other thing we talk about in blocking is how does it really start to spiral out of control in the disastrous relationship. So we're going to stay away from those, but we're going to talk more today about how to build the sound relationship house. Okay. So one of the things we want to look at is how you two can learn to dream together. Now, remember what I said, we know from research that 69% of the problems couples have, you cannot solve. Can't. So we don't try. What we try to do is we try to move from conflict to dialogue. And the dialogue is to understand our partner while at the same time making sure our partner understands us. So you have to slow down. And the big secret to that is something that you've heard me talk about many times already, which is accepting influence. Accepting influence doesn't mean that you just give in and do whatever your partner says. It's really conveying in your heart that you care about what your partner's information is and you really want to slow down and you really want to take it in. That's the scene, and that also means heard. Soothe. It's soothing to talk to your partner. It's soothing for your partner to talk to you. It's safe no matter what they bring up. it's safe to talk about. So in other words, they don't feel like they're walking on eggshells or they're going to get their head bit off if they mention something to you. You never want to have that. And also the same, you don't want them to have that coming back. And then secure, that you're secure in knowing that this can happen this time and down the road. So you're building these 4 S's: seen, soothe, safe, secure, Dan Siegel's work, into your relationship ongoing. Okay. So one of the things that we've talked a lot about is the Sound Relationship House. I'm going to put that up. But what you want to do with the Sound Relationship House is you want to see there's 3 parts. The first part is the lower part, okay, which is the building love maps, the shared fondness and admiration, and the turn towards. Those are your friendship house. That's one of the things you want to build. But you also want to have the middle section, which is the conflict management system. A lot of people don't like conflict. A lot of people avoid it. A lot of people don't want to have it. If a conflict comes up, they just rather go watch TV. They don't want to deal with that stuff, right? So you can't do that. You got to build it. And we've talked a lot about how to build that, but we'll keep going. The thing we're going to talk about today is the higher part of the meeting house. So this is the part, I would say, the 3rd floor. So if we go clear up to the 3rd floor today, what we notice is create shared meaning and make each other's dreams come true. But you notice that the house is interrelated, don't you? You notice that, hey, all of these things are working together. And I'm going to say again, we have to build those 3 parts of the house. They just don't happen. And what's worse is a lot of times not only don't they happen, but we've learned bad habits from childhood, from bad relationships, and we don't want to carry that in to our relationship now. If we have, that's not a problem, as long as you take these suggestions I'm giving you and then work towards them so they become part of the new way that you do this. So today we're going to stay up in that upper part of the house, that 3rd floor. We're going to create shared meaning and we're going to make each other's dreams come true. Okay, so that's part of what we're going to do today. But I just also want to talk about, if you do that well, you build trust. Well, trust and commitment are what hold the house up. If your trust completely goes away, that house is going to fall down, right? And one of the ways it falls down is it affects the commitment pillar. A couple of weeks ago, we had Dr. Bumberry come on, and he was talking about how that relationship house has collapsed when there's infidelity. Okay. But what we want to do is build that whole house so that it's really, really, really strong. Okay. So that's our goal today. We're going to talk about the upper part of the house, and we're also going to make sure that you have good skills so that when you go into our assignment this week and you go home with your partner, that you're going to be able to really make that work. Okay. So what's to the good? Because I always go good, bad, and ugly. The first one is reviewing the marriage house, the love maps. The lower part of the relationship house is knowing your partner's inner world, what's important to them. Well, we're going to talk about that inner world as it pertains to making their life dreams come true, as well as their daily dreams or their yearly dreams, right? We all have New Year's resolutions. We all have traditions. So we're wanting to know those, and we're wanting to slow down and take time to ask from time to time what those are, at the same time letting your partner know what yours are. Okay. The other one that's so important to this is fondness and admiration. And I like to expand that to fondness, admiration, respect, and loyalty. You really want to show your partner that you respect them. I think Bill was talking about on the show on infidelity. Like, for example, if you were at a party and somebody kind of disrespects your partner, you have to speak up. You have to say, hey, that's not true about him or her. That's not, this person is a wonderful person. And this is how you got to speak up and correct people. But mostly when you do that, your partner knows that you stood up for them. That's showing up, right? So we want to look at fondness and admiration, but that loyalty is so important. And then even though you're talking to your partner and you're learning about things, you're talking in a way that shows that you respect them. So you have gentle startup, you have caring and concern in your voice. Okay. So you know what? This is a good stopping spot for a commercial. We're going to come back. We're going to look at the mailbag and we're going to get going on not only what goes wrong, But in our third segment, really some good tips on how to make each other's dreams come true and have shared meaning. We'll talk to you soon.
Mike Zorek, a three-time California state champion in Greco-Roman wrestling at 114 pounds. Mike, blind since birth, was born in Hartford, Connecticut. He was a six-time national placer, including 2 seconds, 2/3, and 2/4. He also won the Veterans Folk-Style Wrestling twice at 152 pounds. In all these tournaments, he was the only blind competitor. Nancy Zorek, a creative spirit whose talents have taken her to the stage and into galleries and exhibitions in several states. Her father, a commercial artist who shared his instruments with his daughter and helped her fine-tune her natural abilities, influenced her decision to follow in his footsteps. Ms. Zorek has enjoyed a fruitful career doing what she loves. Listen Saturday mornings at 12 Eastern for the Nancy and Mike Show for heartwarming stories and interesting talk.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of The Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on The Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
And we're back. So, yes, we're going to go through the mailbag. One thing I wanted to do, I made some notes to myself, and I'm always a little reluctant to do this because if I cite a show, like a movie or a television show, you may not have ever seen it, but I could give you enough background on this because I want to whet your appetite for the mailbag and to really kind of hone in on what I'm talking about today. There was a show a long time ago called The Wonder Years. And the show was about this young boy growing up in America and just kind of life and times, what he was dealing with, how he was growing up, who his friends were. But the reason I say this is I saw one of these shows a long time ago. And what happened is Fred Savage, who was the boy, this character, got to go to with his father to a Take Your Son to Work day. Now, the reason I mention this one, because I think it's particularly poignant to us, is that when he went to work with his dad, the boss really yelled at his father and really kind of put him down in front of his son. Just really did. And his dad just took it. He didn't say anything. He just kind of, you know, ate that negativity that was coming at him. Right. But the reason I bring this one up is he always saw his dad at night with a telescope, and his dad would look up into the stars and kind of see different constellations and stuff like that. And what Fred Savage's character realized in that show was that when his dad was a kid, he had always dreamed about astronomy and looking at the stars and how cool that was. And his dad, I don't think, wanted a job where he gets yelled at and he really didn't like his job, but he did it because his family needed the money and he had a job that was secure. But his son realized at that time that his dad did a lot of sacrificing, which was a lot of love, right? So part of making dad's dream come true probably would have had something to do with maybe going to a place that had these big telescopes and stuff like that. I live in Texas, and if you go down to Big Bend on State Park, they have light sanctuaries where you can see stars and stars and stars. I mean, billions of them. And there's another place that the University of Texas has that has all of these telescopes. And you can go see that. So, that would have been something really cool for them to do and really let the dad go out and see those wonderful things. So that's what I mean about make each other's dreams come true, because we can get stuck in our life. Life happens to us, and we really don't even talk about really what made not only our dreams come true now, but what we always imagined as a kid. So let's look at some of the questions from the mailbag as I've kind of whetted your appetite for that, right? First one I like. This one says, my husband says my dreams are unrealistic. Okay. It makes me feel like I'm not supported. What do we do about that? Well, a couple things. Just remember from previous shows. Um, one of the things that you don't want to do is you don't want to decree something. All right. When you decree something, you basically say, this is reality. So when she says, my husband says my dreams are unrealistic, what her husband's doing is kind of decreeing that her thoughts and opinions and feelings don't really matter because they have to go in deference to what is real, which is his opinion. So what you always want to do with that is soften it. Okay. So one of the things I wish her husband would do in that situation is to say, I don't know how we could fulfill your dream. Tell me more about it. And maybe you and I can come up with something that maybe looks more realistic, but I really need to know more about how you see it as realistic. So see, this is what I need, not what I don't need. See, because what he's saying is this is not realistic. But what he's not doing is saying what could be realistic. And the other thing is if she's bringing it up, chances are she thinks it's realistic. So that requires a conversation. That's all. So remember, fondness, admiration, loyalty, and respect, you really want to make sure that your partner feels those things. Okay. So that's the way I would handle that one. I guess for her, one of the things she could say is, when you say my dreams are unrealistic, I feel really discouraged because this is very important to me. What I guess I would like instead is that we could talk more about it so that you could better understand not only what my dream is, but why it's so important to me. So those are some things you can look at. These are ways to say it instead. Try that. Okay, next question. Now, this one I kind of picked because I hear this commonly. It doesn't have to be this topic, but I hear this commonly. You tell me if you think I'm right. Every time I talk about going back to school, my partner feels threatened. Okay, well, I would adjust that. I worry that my partner might feel threatened, you see. How can we discuss big dreams without turning it into fear or control? Okay, well, one of the things that she's spot on with here is that she's noticing that it's getting shot down and she worries that there's fear involved. Now, we don't know that, but that's what she's sensing. I kind of defer to people on that. They know their partner pretty well, so she might know that there's fear involved. But what can we do about that, right? So one of the things that they may want to do is write down all of the pros and cons to her going back to school, right? Both of them. They don't have to do it together, but why do you worry about it? Well, I'm going to make it up. Sometimes people write, well, it's going to be expensive. It's going to be too much time. How are we going to do that and manage all the kids' stuff? What's our goal for going back to school? Those types of questions, because we don't know. But you notice I'm really big on understanding before I fix. You've heard me say that tons of times. So they don't really know yet all the reasons why they may go back to school, right? I'm to the age personally where I can go back to school for free. And one of the things I don't want to do is go back and get another degree. I've done that plenty, but I would love to take a couple courses on how computers interface with music writing. I really would like to do that. And, that's maybe one course, see, but that's different than going back to school and getting a degree. They need to understand what the dream is behind going back to school. Some people like to do that just because they want to socialize. Some people want to do that because it just gets them back to doing something they love, which is really learning. Maybe the dream behind that is I want to learn something I don't know. So you won't know until you ask. And that's why you have to do it with both hands open. Tell me, honey, what do you imagine if you go back to school? It's going to be all the positives for that. That's a great question. It's an open-ended question, and it invites her to really talk about what school is for them. So that's one of the ways that I'm telling you that we can talk to each other and get going with a nice conversation that involves dreams, right? Okay. This one's another one, but it's kind of the flip side of the coin. This is a worry one, and that is, My partner seems to have lost all sense of purpose. How can I help them rediscover what matters? Okay, well, what matters is a great question, right? I find that when people ask that kind of question is a good starting point is you can look at different parts of your life and see what's kind of gone wrong. Sometimes with life, what happens is things that you really did that you really enjoy you can't do anymore, right? I'll make one that's fairly obvious. Let's say you played in a professional sport. Let's say you were a professional baseball player or a football player or a basketball player, and you played. I mean, you went to all these cities, you did all the stuff that you do when you're involved with that. But then all of a sudden, you get to the end of your career, and that's all you've ever done, right? For some people, they know their job. They've done it for 30, 40 years and they retire, but they really never gave much thought to what they would do after they retired, you see. I'll tell you one for me. I used to jog all the time, love jogging. Oh my gosh. It was really, really something that not only did I do at the end of the day, but I really kind of got all my energy out, all that extra stress and tension in my body. And then when I finished, I felt really, boy, this was great. Can't really run anymore. Some people can at my age, and I tip my hat to them and I'll cheer them on if I go to a marathon or something like that, but it's not me. Now, the good news is I'm fine. I can get around all that. But if I started trying to run, I think it would affect my knees. But now, how do I manage my weight? Because I used to do that with running, right? How do I get rid of that stress? Because I'm used to running. So, see, that would be my purpose, but just as it pertained to exercising. Okay. The other thing is, even if my exercise, for example, right, let's say I always used to do it, right? So let's say I used to do free weights, and boy, look at how that can make my arms strong and everything. My doctors now tell me that if I'm going to do that, what they suggest for me is to use bungee cords or cables, because when you lift a weight, when you're coming back down, it's fine for your muscles, but not for your joints. That's what they tell me. So, what I do is I have to compensate. I have to do that. But let's say I become so discouraged that I don't know what to do, that I've lost my ability to exercise. Well, now my purpose is gone, right? My purpose to exercise is gone. Well, you do that at my age and you might gain some weight. So, that is a wonderful thing for couples to talk about and maybe make some plans either together or individually to get that spark back, to feel like, hey, I'm in control of my life and I can do things that I really, really want to do again. Different, but just as good. So we've got to find those things. And for those of you who might be approaching retirement, this is something you want to think about so that when you do retire, you're going into that transition nicely. So it's just something to think about. I prefer, because this is my show, do it with your partner. Okay. Okay. Let me look at my time. Got about another minute. Let's see what I can come up with. Okay. The thing that I want to just kind of point out is that we want to validate the dream first. So we seek to understand before we seek to fix. A lot of people just want to go right into giving advice. That's not why people generally approach you. They approach you because they want to tell you their pain. I don't know what to do about this. Not the answer, but to hear something like, oh my gosh, that sounds terrible for you. Tell me more about it, right? Side with them. Don't side with the enemy. Don't critique. You want to just get to where you both feel like you're on the same team before you start figuring out what to do about it. Okay. So you're really wanting to ask, tell me what this means to you. What does it mean to go back to school? What does it mean to exercise? What does it mean to have purpose in your life? You want to really stop and understand, right? Their beliefs, their values, what's important to them. The other thing you want to do is to make sure that you talk to them about, well, is this something that you've thought about in the past that we need to revisit? Okay, go back to some past history. So we're going to go ahead and go to break, and then I'm going to give you some more tangible ways that you can invite your partner to have shared meaning and both of you make each other's dreams come true. Hold on, we'll be back in a little bit.
Master of words, powerful player, What life-changing words can Dr. Janet Smith Warfield pull out of her magical toolbox that just might mysteriously open a door you never knew was there? A door to free yourself from fear forever. Transform your rage into right action. Release your guilt. Position you into a life of freedom, purpose, passion, power, and peace. All quite suddenly, unexpectedly, and almost miraculously, with no effort on your part. Join Dr. Janet on Dancing with Words, Dancing with Wisdom, as she and her guests show you how words map our experiences, immersing you in a sound bath that relaxes your muscles, opens your mind, and supports you in co-creating your extraordinary life. Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness: Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them, rediscover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies, find settings that allow them to be the most productive, and track their progress towards accomplishing goals.
And we're back. So we went through a little bit of the mailbag. We talked a little bit about why it's important to have shared meaning and make each other's dreams come true. Not just yours, but really slow down so you know very well what your partner's dreams are. So what I want to do now is move away from some of the theory we've talked about and go into actionable tools, things that we can actually do to make sure that the relationship house is solid. And it's interesting because we're talking about tangible things like how do we talk to our partner, but what I'm really helping you do is to build the relationship house, all three parts. Right? It's very important. If you don't, it affects trust and commitment. So we have to do this, and we have to do it on a regular basis. One of the things I've talked about in the past is weeding the garden, which means you can't just plant a bunch of seeds and come back in the fall and harvest all of the good food that you put out there. You're going to have to tend to it, water it, keep the bugs away, all of the things we have to do when we farm. So one of the things we're going to talk about is how do we make each other's dreams come true and have shared meaning? Okay. So one thing I did was just as an exchange, because we did this last week and it was kind of fun. So partner A might say, when I say I want to buy a little cabin, right? Think of maybe a lakefront property, something like that. So when I want to buy a little cabin, it's not about the house. It's about wanting a place of our own in nature. Okay. So notice that the first thing we did was we went from tangibly buying a cabin, right? To it's not about the cabin, to what is it about? To wanting a place of my own in nature. I know a lot of people, that at least one time a year, they want to get out and go camping. They want to pitch a tent, or they want to go out on the water, or they want to do something that's in nature. They don't want to just stay and do things in their backyard. I know a lot of people like that. I wonder if you all do, something like that. So this person here would like to have a log cabin. So they're imagining it, right? They're imagining it. I've heard people say, we want to buy one of those big things that you drive on the road and you can park, and you have an RV, a recreational vehicle, where when you park, you've got all of your camping gear and stuff like that, but you sleep in the cabin and you cook in the cabin. Some people love to do that, but what are they doing? They're going away. They're having the comforts of their own home, but they're also getting out in nature, maybe throwing a frisbee, something like that. So if partner A says, when I say I want to buy a little cabin, partner B might say, I never knew that. Huh. You know, um, I can see where needing to be outdoors is really important. Now, for me, I don't know how we could afford a cabin right now, but let's talk more about what we can do and maybe look down the road at, owning a cabin. And if you did own a cabin, what part of the world would you want to own the cabin in? See, so all of a sudden, all of these open-ended questions are there to better understand what the cabin fantasy is. And also, you're accepting influence. You're saying, I want to know about this. It matters to me that your dreams, what's important to you, is something I know, understand, and if I can help, I want to be able to do that. So that's what we're going to talk about. So again, accepting influence doesn't just say that you understand your partner's beliefs. It's making sure that you feel connected. Some people really worry and feel like that if they give in, they're somehow weak or they're somehow mild and mannered, and they can't do that. They have to have an opinion, and in the opinion, right? They can. Oh, sorry, my phone. My phone shouldn't be ringing. Sorry, I have it on silent. So what happens with that is that we don't want to kind of instantly go into overseeing. More to the point, we want to have an opportunity to really help our partner feel like we care about what their dream are, even if we don't agree with it, even if we think it's silly. Maybe one of the things that I thought is, oh my gosh, owning a cabin would be the silliest thing in the world, right? Well, doesn't really matter what I think when we start out. What we want to do is be curious. Okay. So sorry about that. Okay. I keep hitting the button, but it doesn't stop. That is so weird. All right. So let's see. What else do we want to do? That is so weird. My apologies. All right. So the last thing I want to talk about with regard to the accepting influence is rituals of connection. When do we have these conversations? How do we talk? Right? Well, rituals of connection are those traditions that we set up regularly just to check in and touch base with people. Okay, just to check with that. So, for example, you might have date nights. That could be a tradition. You might have shared meals. You might have a morning coffee with your partner. These are really good opportunities if it doesn't get out of hand to really bring up some topics and some conversations so that we can say, well, this is really something that's important to you. Let's make some time that we can talk about it later. Doesn't sound like we'll have time to do it now, but let's do that. So sometimes on our rituals of connections, things that we do, this is really important because for a lot of us, we have that with our kids. We have that with things that we'll do, even if we walk our dog, right? We might take a half an hour to just walk our dog or something like that. And we always put it into the day. And it's kind of nice because it gives us a chance to get outside and exercise and do all those kind of things. So it's just really important to set those things aside for our partner as well as for us, right? So, all right. So that's one of the things that we want to look at. I mentioned on a previous show that one of the things that happened when I was a kid is I always got up early to go to choir practice. And my dad was always up early. I think it was his time to really think and just wonder what he's going to have for the day and all that sort of thing. But, I always ran to school because that's what they expected of me. But one time I really wish that I would have just stopped and had coffee with my dad because that was something that I can't do now, right? My father has been gone for a while. So I really wish I had taken that time when I was a kid to do that. So just like I said, we want to take advantage of these opportunities while we have them. Just very important. Okay. Another thing too is I always like to think of taking turns giving plenty of time for each of you to talk. And I like taking turns rather than going back and forth. Now, some of you, for your style, you like just to maybe interactive. But if it starts to get a little more contentious, maybe stop and really take turns giving the point of view and the other person, letting them know that I heard you. What I hear you say is this. Did I get it right? Oh, good, good, good. How about I take a turn now? So try to make it so both of you increase your ability and capacity to understand your partner for those important items that you need to talk about. Okay. So again, you're really focusing on what's important to my partner. Now, let's say that you've done that. One of the things you could end it with, or if you have a little more time, talk about what we call opportunity. So, we really can't afford a log cabin right now. But, however, why don't we plan to go out and have a 4-day weekend where we can camp? Maybe we can go do something somewhere. Maybe we can go and, kind of rent a boat, or maybe we can go and get a kayak and we can go down the river. Something that might make that partner check that box, at least for right now, that they did something with nature and how to do that. I'm in Austin, Texas, so it's not hard to do that because it's probably 96 degrees today, even though right now with the airing of this show, it's mid-October. But with Texas, you got to watch for other things like rattlesnakes and those types of things. But usually, if you go camping in areas, you don't have to worry too much. You just have to be on guard. I know people in different parts of the country, they have to worry about, oh, I don't know, grizzly bears or black bears or something like that. So you just always want to make sure that you're safe, but at the same time, that you get some of those wonderful things that you can do. All right. So that's what we call opportunity. So talk about what can we do to make sure that happens. Now, the long-term gain may be, hey, let's go ahead and look about the opportunity of maybe having a lakefront place, or maybe we rent one for the month, or maybe we get an Airbnb or something. Just whatever it is, talk and dream and imagine together, right? You don't have to do anything, but dreaming and imagining is really crucial for people to feel like their life is happening and they have hope and they can be fulfilled. All right. Just really, really important. Now, another thing I want to kind of talk about before we take our last break is think about your own family. Okay. Think about, back in the days. And one of the things that you want to look at is what was important to your grandparents? What was important to your parents? If you don't have parents and grandparents, maybe a favorite uncle or a doting aunt, something. But look at the people that were important to you growing up. What was important to them? What did they like to do? What was fun? Okay. For some people, they love to travel. For some people, they would never want to travel. For some people, both of you agree you never want to travel. For some of you, both of you love to take 2 or 3 quick trips where you get out and see something that you'd never seen before. It's when one wants to be a homebody and the other one wants to travel. That requires a conversation. That's what we would call in Gottman land a gridlock issue, where when one wants to do something, they're in opposition to their other. We have ways of making sure people can take those kind of conflicts and resolve them in ways where both of them feel good and they can get their needs met as best they can by yielding in order to win. I'm going to say again, you don't want to have those kind of relationships where you get your dreams, but you smush your partner's dreams, right? We never, ever want to have that. So we have ways to make that happen. Okay. But one thing that I do want to look at, if you look at your family growing up, did you ever have anybody in your family that wanted to have something happen but never had those dreams fulfilled? I talked earlier about that TV show called The Wonder Years. That was just a TV show, but you can look at that. I wonder if the dad ever really got to enjoy what he wanted to enjoy when he imagined as a kid looking at the stars, right? Some people they have TV shows they watch. Maybe they watch I don't know, Star Trek, something like that, where they're, all they do is go and explore the stars, right? And they have people they work together with that they're friends and they have adventures. So for a little bit of time, you can imagine being on a starship, and imagine having those wonderful adventures, even though it's a movie. But for some people, they still want to go and look at the stars. They still want to go camp. They still want to do things that really makes them feel like they got an armload of life when they are older. So we're going to look at that. Okay. But remember, we really want to look at the entire relationship house, right? We really want to look at that. So it's not just how to resolve conflict, but it's really looking at the friendship with your partner. And now we've added a little bit more, although I've talked about it in the past, how to make each other's dreams come true and shared meaning. We'll come back in a moment, and then we're going to have that fun thing we do where everybody goes out and practices something for the week together. Remember, we're a community here, and we're wanting to do this in ways that we all feel like we're a part of the team. We'll see you shortly.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent, but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of the Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on the Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
Master of words, powerful player. What life-changing words can Dr. Janet Smith Warfield pull out of her magical toolbox that just might mysteriously open a door you never knew was there? A door to free yourself from fear forever. Transform your rage into right action. Release your guilt. Position you into a life of freedom, purpose, passion, power, and peace. All quite suddenly, unexpectedly, and almost miraculously, with no effort on your part. Join Dr. Janet on Dancing with Words, Dancing with Wisdom, as she and her guests show you how words map our experiences, immersing you in a sound bath that relaxes your muscles, opens your mind, and supports you in co-creating your extraordinary life.
All right, we're back. And this is the fourth part of my show, which means we're all as a community going to go out and have some fun by doing my assignment that I'm about to give you. Now, remember, these things are just fun. Always remember safety first, as with anything. But we're going to take some of what we've learned today. One of the things I'd like you to do, if you liked my show today, and you go ahead and take some time with your partner and rewatch this show together. That way you can stop the show, okay? And you can talk about it and then proceed to the next. Especially, you noticed the third section was to give you some practical ideas, but some of you might have really liked one of the mailbags. And they say, hey, listen to this one, because this one really sounds like us. What do you think? And then you could stop and do some of the things that I am suggesting, okay? But for our fourth segment, just for fun, what we're going to do, and this is, for the week, is what we've done for the relationship today. So what we're going to do is take one question from our last segment. Okay, one thing that I put in there. Now make it your own. So for example, I put something about a cabin, getting a cabin. You may not ever want to get a cabin, but maybe one of the things that you've wanted to do is to take a getaway weekend for about 4 days. Or maybe you want to start a new tradition as you come up on Halloween. Or maybe, if you're in the Midwest especially, and you want to go see the leaf change, and you're saying, hey, when I was a kid, we always went and picked apples and saw the leaf change. Whatever it is, come up with some things that really would make you feel like you did something for the year, that you checked a box off and really got an armload of life this year. Whenever I do my New Year's resolutions. And by and large, when I do a New Year's resolution, I complete it. I don't make things that are pie in the sky, but I really say, what am I going to do for this year? As I get to the last week of this year, traditionally, right in December, I take that week and I kind of look at different things. For example, I look at who we lost this year on the internet. Another thing I do is I look at what I wanted to do in January of this year and did I complete it. The other thing I might do is say, hey, coming into next year, what do I want to say I did in that year? So I really felt like I got an armload of life that I didn't get cheated out of. Because if you don't do that, then you don't have a chance to make it happen. If you come to the end of the year and say, oh, shoot, I wanted to do that and I never even gave it a second thought, and now the year's gone and I lost out. I don't want you to do that. I want you to be able to make sure that you have those kind of dreams that you want fulfilled. But I'm adding, I want you to be sure that you've got your partner's back when it comes to doing that. Very, very important, because otherwise you go through life and things don't happen and then you regret it. We don't want to have that happen. So for this week, what I want to do is to take one of the questions from the segment that we did today and plan a half an hour with your partner. And then what I want you to do is to take 15 minutes each exploring something that they hope happens in their lifetime, that if they don't get it, they'll feel like they missed out. Now, it could be a grand thing, it can be a little thing, but make sure that you talk about it and be on their side. This is a great opportunity for all of you to accept influence. I want to know what's important to you, right? I'm going to tell you again, I really felt like I missed out when I didn't take and spend a little time with my dad enjoying that cup of coffee at like 5:30 in the morning. Sounds a little early, but boy, I would love to go back in time and have that experience and opportunity. I can't. I don't want you guys to have examples like that in your life. And it starts today, right? And if you have had those in the past, okay, well, maybe you lost out. That doesn't mean you're going to lose out in the future, because we're going to do this and you're going to involve your partner. Remember, safety first, right? Want to make sure that it's always easy for you guys to do with that. I just want to say thank you again for watching. I hope you're enjoying my show. I've already done a half a year's worth of these shows, which is really neat. I think we're close to our 25th, 26th episode. So my goodness, how time flies. This is one of the resolutions I had this year, was to make sure that I put these shows down for all of you. It dovetails nicely while I'm writing my book, because I hope to and interface both of those at some point. But I'm going to say again, it's not a fair fight. Our world is designed for entertainment and it's designed for ratings. It isn't designed necessarily to have you or I have good relationships. So we need to know what works, and we need to do those things, and we need to do them on a regular basis. So let's continue to do this. Let's continue to be a community. Please give me feedback of what you would like to know about, shows in the future you might like to see, and then certainly feedback, especially with mailbag, because I'm really enjoying those. All of you take care. We'll see you next Wednesday, 1 o'clock Eastern time, and you can set wherever you live for that. If you're in France, at 7 p.m. in the evening. Doesn't matter. I'm on there live, and I will see you next week. Take care, and we'll talk then.
While All About Relationships is educational and entertaining, it is not a substitute for therapy, counseling, or professional advice, but an informative space for learning and growth. So tune in each week for an engaging and reliable approach to your relationships, ensuring viewers with practical tools to create deeper connections in their daily lives. Whether tackling conflict resolution, emotional intimacy, or family dynamics, this show is your go-to resource for anyone looking to foster healthier, happier relationships in a supportive and lighthearted environment. Every Wednesday, 1 p.m. Eastern.